The millionaire couldn't believe it when he found his daughter starving. She had been left with the neighbor. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Let's begin. Robert Sinclair was the kind of man who commanded respect upon entering any room. At 45, he was one of the most respected entrepreneurs in the New York technology sector. His company, Sinclair Tech, had grown exponentially over the past 5 years, winning international contracts and placing his name among the most influential in the American market. The owner of an imposing mansion on the Upper East Side, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city, his life seemed perfectly organized. A booming business, efficient teams, national recognition, and an unshakable reputation among investors and politicians. But behind the image of success, there was an emptiness that no million-dollar contract could fill: his relationship with his daughter, Sophia, a 9-year-old girl, a widower since his daughter's birth. Robert had never adjusted to the sudden absence of his wife as Marina, who had suffered complications during childbirth. In the early years, he delegated the girl's care to nannies, private tutors, and specialists. He told himself he was securing her future, building an empire that would be her legacy. Sophia grew up surrounded by material comfort, in rooms decorated with everything a child could desire, but with emotional gaps that not even the most expensive toys could fill. On that Wednesday morning, Robert descended the marble staircase of his mansion, checking messages on his phone. His suit was impeccably tailored, with graying hair at his temples that gave him an air of maturity, and the expensive cologne that was his trademark. "Good morning, sir," greeted Martha, the housekeeper who had worked in the house for years. "Breakfast is served, and the documents you requested are on the table." "Thank you, Martha. Is Sophia awake yet?" "Not yet, sir. She was studying late last night. Her private tutor said she's been very tired." Robert nodded, not truly absorbing the information. In recent months, he had intensified his daughter's study routine: advanced English, piano lessons, swimming, math tutoring. He wanted her to have all the opportunities he hadn't had in his childhood. He sat at the table, drank his coffee, and quickly leafed through the documents. In less than an hour, he would be boarding a flight to Chicago, where he would close a strategic partnership with a foreign company. "Martha, I'll be away for 4 days. Is Mrs. Peterson coming to stay with Sophia?" he asked, referring to the former nanny, who now only came when he needed to travel. The housekeeper hesitated before answering. "Sir, Mrs. Peterson called me last night. Her sister in Ohio is ill, and she won't be able to come." Robert stopped reading the documents and looked at the housekeeper with irritation. "And why are you only telling me this now?" "I tried to speak with you yesterday, sir, but you came home very late and were on the phone." Robert took a deep breath, controlling his frustration. He needed to solve this problem quickly. He opened his digital calendar, looking for another nanny's contact, when he heard a voice. "Dad, are you going on a trip?" Sophia was standing at the entrance to the dining room, still in her pajamas, holding a storybook. Her long brown hair framed a pale face and eyes that always seemed sad, even when she smiled. There was a fragility about her that contrasted with the luxurious and cold environment of the mansion. "Good morning, Sophia," he replied, trying to soften his voice. "Yes, I'm going to Chicago for an important meeting. I'll be back Sunday night. You said you were going to take me to the museum on Saturday," she reminded him in a low voice, hugging the book to her chest as if it were a shield. Robert felt a pang of guilt. He had indeed promised, but the trip had come up at the last minute and was an opportunity he couldn't miss. "We'll go another weekend, Sophia. This deal is really important." The girl's face showed no surprise or disappointment. It was as if she already expected it, as if she had already learned, at 9 years old, that her father's promises were rarely kept. "It's okay," she replied. Sitting down at the table, Martha served the girls breakfast: cut fruit, whole wheat toast, and orange juice. Sophia ate slowly, without looking up. Robert tried to think of something to say, but was interrupted by his phone ringing. "I have to take this," he said, standing up. "It's Joe Edwards from the Stamford branch." He moved away from the table, focused on the call, while Sophia watched in silence. It was always like this. The business world came first, she came second. When he finished the call, Robert turned to Martha. "We need to find someone to stay with Sophia until Sunday," he said, worried about the time he was losing. "Call that temporary nanny agency." "I already called, sir. They don't have anyone available for today on such short notice." Robert checked his watch. His flight would leave in 2 hours, and he needed to be at the airport in less than one. "Martha, can't you stay?" "Sir, my son is recovering from surgery. I need to take care of him at night. I can come during the day, but at night it's impossible." It was at that moment the doorbell rang. Martha went to answer it and returned accompanied by an elegant woman of about 40. It was Carmen Harrington, the neighbor from the mansion next door. One of the most respected figures in the neighborhood. "Good morning, Robert," she greeted with a cordial smile. "I came to pick up the donations for the charity bazaar." Carmen was known for her social work. She coordinated charity events, served on the boards of several institutions, and was always impeccably dressed and made up. She was a widow, like Robert, and lived alone in the mansion next door, an inheritance from her late husband, a famous real estate tycoon. "Carmen, I'm so glad you came," Robert replied, seeing a possible solution to his problem. "Martha, please bring the boxes we set aside." While Martha left, Robert quickly explained his situation to Carmen. The unexpected trip, the nanny who couldn't come, the housekeeper who couldn't stay at night. "I'm really in a bind," he concluded. Carmen looked at Sophia, who remained seated at the table, pretending not to pay attention to the adults' conversation. "I can stay with her," Carmen offered naturally. "It would be a pleasure to have her company for these few days." "You would do that?" Robert asked, feeling immediately relieved. "Of course. I have experience with children from my volunteer work, and my house is right next door. She can even bring some of her things. It will be like a little temporary move." Robert hesitated for a moment. He knew Carmen socially, from neighborhood events and a few charity functions he had sponsored, but he had never left Sophia in her care. However, the woman had an excellent reputation, was respected by everyone in the neighborhood, and seemed genuinely willing to help. "Sophia, what do you think?" he asked his daughter, trying to include her in the decision. The girl looked at Carmen with her large brown eyes and shrugged. "It's fine," she replied, with the same resignation as always. "Perfect," Carmen exclaimed. "It will be fun, Sophia. I have many storybooks you'll love." Robert felt relieved to have found such a quick solution. In less than an hour, Sophia had a small suitcase packed with clothes, school supplies, and some of her favorite toys. Martha helped her get ready and gave Carmen some instructions about the girl's medication schedule as she took a mild anti-allergy medicine. Before leaving, Robert knelt to be at Sophia's eye level. It was something he rarely did. "Behave yourself at Mrs. Harrington's house, okay? I'll call every day to see how you are." Sophia nodded. "Dad, can I take Lily?" she asked, referring to the rag doll Marina had bought during her pregnancy. "Of course you can," he replied, feeling a tightness in his chest at the sight of the doll that had belonged to his late wife. It was one of the few connections Sophia had to her mother. Sophia hugged the doll tightly, and Robert noticed how small and fragile she seemed. For a brief moment, he wondered if he should really travel, if he couldn't postpone the meeting. But he quickly dismissed the thought. It was too important a deal to postpone. "Don't worry, Robert," Carmen said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'll take care of her as if she were my own daughter." Robert thanked her once more, grabbed his bags, and left, feeling at ease for having resolved the situation. In the taxi on the way to the airport, he called his business partner, mentioning that he had found a perfect solution for Sophia during his absence. What Robert couldn't imagine was that, at that very moment, Sophia was entering Carmen Harrington's mansion, a place that from the outside looked as elegant as its owner, but which held secrets no one in the neighborhood suspected. "Welcome to your new temporary home, Sophia," Carmen said, closing the front door. Her tone of voice immediately changing, becoming colder. "Let's establish some fundamental rules for our time together." Sophia, still clutching her doll, Lily, looked around. The interior of the house was surprisingly austere compared to its imposing exterior. The furniture, though expensive, was dark and old. There were no plants, no vibrant colors, none of the warmth one would expect from a home. The windows were covered with heavy curtains, blocking the natural light, An unsettling silence hung in the air, as if the house were always waiting for something. "First," Carmen continued, leading Sophia down the hallway, "you will stay in this room here." She opened the door to a small, simple room, almost Spartan. A single bed with a thin mattress, an old wardrobe, and a desk made up all the furniture. There was no decoration on the walls, no rugs on the worn wooden floor. The only window had bars, supposedly for security. Second, we have strict schedules in this house. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 7 in the evening. Anyone who isn't on time goes without eating. Sophia placed her suitcase at the foot of the bed, clutching the doll even tighter to her chest. "Do you have children?" she asked timidly. Carmen's eyes darkened for an instant, as if a cloud had passed over them. "No, and don't ask personal questions." Third rule, only speak when spoken to. Sophia looked down, already feeling intimidated. She was used to her father's emotional absence, but this was different. There was something in Carmen's tone, in the calculated coldness of her gestures, that made her deeply uncomfortable. Fourth rule, Carmen continued, snatching the doll Lily from Sophia's arms with a swift movement. "No dirty, old toys in my house, but Lily is mine. My mom gave her to me," Sophia protested. Trying to get the doll back, Carmen's hand flew out, striking Sophia across the face with a slap that made her stumble backward. The girl's eyes widened in shock and pain. "Fifth rule," Carmen said, her voice dangerously low, "never contradict me. Children who disobey are severely punished." Sophia, with her hand on the cheek where she had been hit, felt tears welling up but held them back. Something told her that crying would only make things worse. "Lily will be kept with me until you leave. If you behave, I might give her back at the end," Carmen said, putting the doll in a drawer. "Now unpack your suitcase and put your things away. Then come downstairs to start your chores." "Chores?" Sophia asked, confused. "Yes, did you think you would stay here doing nothing? I have a list of tasks for you. Start learning early that nothing in life comes for free." With that, Carmen left the room, closing the door. Sophia heard the sound of a key turning in the lock, locking her in. She stood there in shock, trying to understand what was happening. How could this woman who seemed so kind in front of her father change so much? Why was she treating her this way? And why had she taken her doll? The one object that made her feel close to the mother she never knew. Sophia unpacked her suitcase with trembling hands, putting her clothes in the empty wardrobe. There weren't many hangers, so she folded most of the items carefully. She tried to organize her books and school supplies on the desk, seeking some normality in that hostile environment. The lock turned again, and Carmen entered, now holding a sheet of paper. "Your schedule for today," she said, handing over the list. "First, you will dust the living room. Then you will organize the books in the library in alphabetical order. When you finish, you may have lunch." Sophia looked at the extensive list of household chores. She had never done this kind of work at home. Despite her father being emotionally absent, they always had staff who took care of cleaning and maintenance. "But I don't know how to do these things," she admitted, afraid of contradicting Carmen again. "Then it's time to learn," Carmen replied dryly. "There are children your age in orphanages who work much harder. You are just a spoiled girl who has never had to lift a finger for anything. That will change during your stay here." Sophia followed Carmen to the living room, where she received strict instructions on how to clean each object. The woman watched her every move, severely criticizing any imperfection. "Do you see this smudge?" Carmen pointed to a small trace of dust on a sideboard. "Do it again and again, until it's perfect." The hours passed, and Sophia's arms ached. She had never worked so hard in her entire life. When she finally finished cleaning the room, Carmen took her to the library, a large room with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books. "Organize everything in alphabetical order by author," she ordered, "and don't you dare damage a single volume." Sophia looked at the monumental task, feeling overwhelmed. There must have been hundreds of books there. How would she finish by lunchtime? "But there are so many books," she said quietly. "I won't be able to finish before lunch." Carmen's gaze hardened. "Then you will go without lunch. It's as simple as that. In this house, only those who work properly get to eat." She left Sophia alone in the library, surrounded by piles of books. The girl climbed onto a stool to reach the higher shelves and began to work methodically, her stomach already protesting with hunger. She had eaten almost nothing for breakfast. Anxious about her father's trip, as she organized the books, Sophia tried to understand what she had done wrong to be treated this way. Was it a punishment? Did her father know what Carmen was really like? Maybe it was just a test, something temporary to teach her a lesson. At noon, the aroma of food filled the house. Sophia could smell rice and beans and what seemed to be roast beef. Her stomach rumbled loudly, but she still had at least half the library to organize. She worked even faster, desperate to finish in time, but when Carmen appeared at the door, she shook her head in disapproval. Just as I thought. You didn't finish. No lunch for you today. But I did my best, Sophia protested, stepping down from the stool. There are so many books. Excuses from a lazy child, Carmen replied coldly. Keep working. Maybe you'll get to have dinner if you finish everything by then. Sophia felt tears stream down her face, but she wiped them away quickly. She couldn't show weakness. Something told her Carmen would take advantage of it. She continued to work, her stomach aching with hunger, her small hands moving slower and slower as the afternoon wore on. Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Sophia felt a flash of hope. Was it her father? Had he changed his mind and come back to get her? She heard voices coming from the entrance. Quickly, she got off the stool and ran to see who it was. She stopped in the hallway when she saw Martha, her family's housekeeper, talking to Carmen. I just came to bring Sophia's medicine, Martha was saying, handing over a bottle. We forgot to put it in her suitcase. She needs to take a spoonful before bed. Sophia wanted to run to Martha, to tell her what was happening, to ask to be taken back home. But before she could move, she felt Carmen's hand grip her arm tightly, pulling her behind her. Sophia is resting now, Carmen said with a fake smile. We had a busy morning of activities. She was exhausted. Thank Martha for the medicine, dear. The grip on Sophia's arm was so tight she knew it would leave a mark. She understood the implicit threat. If she said anything, there would be consequences. Thank you, Martha, she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. The housekeeper seemed to notice something odd, frowning as she saw Sophia's pale face and Carmen's tight grip on her arm. Is everything all right, Sophia? She asked, leaning in a little. Before Sophia could answer, Carmen intervened. Of course it is. We're having so much fun, aren't we, Sophia? Tell Martha about the books we've been reading. The grip tightened. Sophia swallowed hard. Yes, we've been reading a lot. Martha didn't seem convinced, but she didn't press the matter. She handed over the medicine and said goodbye, but not before casting one last worried glance at Sophia. As soon as Martha was gone, Carmen dragged Sophia back to the library. Don't even think about telling anyone about our arrangement here, she threatened. If you say one word, I will tell your father how spoiled and ungrateful you are. I'll say you broke valuable objects, that you disrespected me, that you were a terrible guest. Who do you think he'll believe? Me, a respectable woman of society, or a problematic child? Sophia lowered her head, knowing Carmen was right. Her father rarely believed her when she said she felt sick or sad. Why would he believe her now, especially against the word of an adult so well regarded by everyone? Get back to work, Carmen ordered. And remember, not a word about our arrangements here. This is between us. Sophia nodded silently and returned to the task of organizing the books, feeling completely alone and unprotected. The afternoon dragged on slowly as she worked, her stomach aching with hunger, her arms tired, the dried tears on her face. That same afternoon, many miles away, Robert Sinclair was signing a $1 million contract in his hotel room in Chicago. He called room service to celebrate with champagne. After hanging up, he remembered he had promised to call Sophia. He picked up his cell phone and dialed Carmen's number. After a few rings, she answered with a melodious voice. Hello, Robert. So good to hear from you. I imagine you want to speak with Sophia. Yes. How is she? Wonderfully well. We're having so much fun. We've read stories, had a special snack, and she even helped me organize some books. A very polite girl. You must be proud. Do you want to speak with her? On the other end of the line, Robert smiled, relieved. Everything seemed to be going perfectly well. He heard Carmen call for Sophia. Moments later, his daughter's voice came on the phone. "Dad, hi Sophia, how are you? Is everything okay with Mrs. Harrington?" Sophia hesitated. For a moment, she thought about telling him everything. The slap, the confiscated doll, the forced labor, the hunger. But she saw Carmen standing in front of her, watching her intensely, her gaze threatening. "I'm fine, Dad," she finally replied. "We're reading a lot." "That's great. See? I told you it would be fun. I'll call again tomorrow." The call was brief. Sophia couldn't say more than monosyllables. When she hung up, Carmen took the phone from her hands. "Very good," she said with a cold smile. "You're a smart girl. Keep it up, and maybe I'll let you have something to eat tonight." Sophia returned silently to the library, resuming her endless task. As she organized the books, a certainty grew within her. She was completely alone in this situation. Her father wasn't coming to save her. No one would believe her against the word of Carmen Harrington. She would have to survive these 4 days on her own. The first night at Carmen's house was one of the hardest Sophia had ever faced in her 9 years of life. After finishing the library organization, it was already past 8 o'clock. Her small hands were covered in dust. Her arms ached from the effort of reaching the highest shelves, and her stomach rumbled with hunger. Carmen inspected the work meticulously, running her fingers over the spines of the books, checking the alphabetical order. After a few tense minutes, she nodded reluctantly. "Acceptable," she said, without enthusiasm. "You may eat something now." She led Sophia to the kitchen, a large but equally austere space, with old appliances and a clinical feel. On the table was a plate with a slice of bread, a piece of cheese, and an apple. Not leftovers from dinner, but a deliberately frugal meal. "Eat in 15 minutes, Carmen instructed. "Then take a shower and go to bed. We'll wake up early tomorrow." Sophia attacked the food with voracity, trying to chew slowly to savor each bite. But her body demanded speed. 15 minutes later, Carmen returned to the kitchen, taking the plate away even though Sophia hadn't completely finished. "Time's up. Go wash up." The shower was quick and with cold water. Carmen claimed the water heater needed to be conserved. While Sophia brushed her teeth in the small bathroom adjacent to her room, the woman entered without knocking, carrying the medicine bottle that Martha had brought. "Your anti-allergy medicine," she said, measuring out a spoonful of the pink liquid. Sophia hesitated. Something didn't feel right. The medicine she took at home was clear, not pink. "My medicine isn't this color," she mumbled, taking a step back. Carmen's face hardened, her eyes flashing with irritation. "Are you calling me a liar? This is the medicine your housekeeper brought. Now take it." Sophia knew she was right about the color of the medicine, but she also knew it was useless to argue. Reluctantly, she swallowed the liquid, tasting a bitter flavor she had never experienced before. Almost immediately, she felt a heavy drowsiness wash over her. "To bed now," Carmen ordered, watching closely as Sophia staggered to her room, suddenly exhausted. Lying on the thin mattress, Sophia fought against the sleep that seemed to pull her down like quicksand. She thought of her father, of Martha the housekeeper, of her home. Did anyone realize what was happening? Would anyone come to save her from this nightmare? Before she could think further, darkness completely engulfed her. The morning came with the shrill sound of a bell. Sophia opened her eyes, disoriented, her head heavy as if filled with cotton. For a few moments, she didn't recognize where she was. Then it all came back. Carmen's house, the forced labor, the hunger, the strange medicine. She got up with difficulty, dressed quickly, and went down to the kitchen. The clock read 6:30 in the morning. "You're late," said Carmen, who was already fully dressed and made up, as if for an important engagement. "Breakfast is at 6. You missed it." Sophia's stomach sank. More hunger. "But you didn't wake me up. It's not my responsibility to wake you. Children need to learn discipline. As punishment for your tardiness, you will not have breakfast and will begin today's chores immediately." Carmen handed her a new list. Even longer than the previous days. Sophia read it with growing despair. Clean all the bathrooms in the house, polish the silver cutlery, pull the weeds in the backyard garden. Heavy work for an adult. let alone a 9-year-old child. And don't even think about slacking off, Carmen warned. If you don't finish everything by lunch, you'll go without eating again. Sophia swallowed her tears. She was beginning to understand that crying only made things worse. She took the cleaning supplies Carmen indicated and started with the master bathroom, a huge room with an old bathtub and a marble floor. As she scrubbed the floor with a small brush, she heard the phone ring. It was her father, making his promised morning call. Carmen answered with her usual syrupy voice, the same one she used in public, instantly transforming into the helpful and kind neighbor. "Sophia is in the shower right now, Robert," Sophia heard her say. "Can I have her call you back later? We're going to the park soon. She's very excited." "The park? What park?" Sophia felt a growing anger at the blatant lie. Carmen had no intention of taking her anywhere but the rooms that needed cleaning. The day followed its torturous course. Sophia worked hard, her stomach aching with hunger and her hands burning from the cleaning chemicals. When she finally finished the bathrooms and moved on to the silver cutlery, it was already past noon. As expected, Carmen appeared to inspect, deliberately finding flaws. "Look at this spot here." She pointed to a tile in the corner of the bathroom. "And this piece of cutlery is still tarnished. Shoddy work. No lunch for you." Sophia was beginning to suspect that no matter how hard she tried, Carmen would always find some fault. Hunger was a tool of control, a way to weaken her and keep her submissive. She spent the afternoon in the garden, pulling weeds under the hot sun, her hands now covered in painful blisters. It was then that she heard a voice from the other side of the high fence that separated Carmen's property from the neighboring house. "Hello, is anyone there?" Sophia looked up, seeing a boy of about 12 peeking through a gap in the fence. He had messy dark hair and curious eyes. "Hi," Sophia replied quietly, looking nervously towards the house to make sure Carmen wasn't watching. "What are you doing?" the boy asked, intrigued by the sight of a child working so hard. "Pulling weeds," she answered, showing her dirty and scraped hands. The boy frowned. "But you're too little to do that by yourself. My mom always hires a gardener." "Are you Mrs. Harrington's relative?" "No. I'm the neighbor's daughter from the other side. I'm staying with her while my dad is away." The boy seemed even more confused. "And she makes you work like this?" "That doesn't seem right." Sophia hesitated. This was an opportunity to ask for help, to tell him what was really happening. But the fear of Carmen's retaliation was stronger. "It's okay," she lied. "Going back to pulling weeds. I like to help." The boy didn't seem convinced. "I'm Lucas," he introduced himself. "I live here with my mom. She's a doctor." "I'm Sophia." "Sophia, you look tired and sad. Are you sure everything's okay?" Before Sophia could answer, she heard Carmen's sharp voice calling her from the back door. "Sophia, come here immediately." The girl jumped to her feet, fear written all over her face. Lucas noticed her reaction. "I have to go," Sophia mumbled, hurrying towards the house. "I'll be here tomorrow, same time," Lucas said before disappearing. Sophia entered the house with a racing heart. Carmen was waiting for her with her arms crossed and a furious expression. "Who were you talking to?" "No one," Sophia answered instinctively. The slap came quickly, catching her by surprise. Sophia fell to the kitchen floor, her cheek stinging. "Never lie to me," Carmen hissed. "I saw you talking to Dr. Wallace's son. What did you tell him?" "Nothing," Sophia protested, protecting her face with her hands. "He just asked me what I was doing, and I said I was helping in the garden. That's all." Carmen studied her for a long time, as if trying to determine if she was telling the truth. "If I find out you told him anything about our situation here, you will be severely punished. Understand?" Sophia nodded, still on the floor. "Get up and finish the garden," Carmen ordered, "and stay away from that boy. I don't want you talking to anyone." The rest of the day passed without further incident, but the encounter with Lucas had planted a seed of hope in Sophia's heart. For the first time since she arrived at that house, she felt that maybe she wasn't completely alone. At night, she again received an insufficient meal and the same strange medicine that made her sleep deeply. This time, she tried to pretend to take it, hiding the liquid in her mouth and spitting it into the toilet when Carmen wasn't looking. She partially succeeded, but still felt drowsiness overpower her, though less intensely than the night before. Lying in bed, fighting the induced sleep, Sophia thought of Lucas. He had noticed something was wrong. Would he tell his mother? Could the doctor help her in some way? With these thoughts, she fell asleep, but her sleep was restless, filled with nightmares where she was trapped in a labyrinth of books, chased by a shadow with Carmen's face. On the third day, Sophia woke up before the bell, determined not to miss breakfast. She went downstairs at 5:45, finding the kitchen still empty. She waited patiently, her stomach rumbling. At 6 o'clock sharp, Carmen appeared, surprised to see Sophia already sitting at the table. "I see you've learned your lesson about punctuality," she commented, serving a tiny bowl of oatmeal. "Eat quickly. We have a lot of work today." Sophia devoured the oatmeal, grateful for any food, no matter how small. She was growing weaker, feeling frequent dizzy spells and having trouble concentrating. Her arms and legs felt like they weighed a ton. The new list of chores was even more challenging. Clean all the windows of the house inside and out, organize the dusty basement, wash and iron a set of heavy curtains. Work for a team, not for a malnourished child. "Why do you do this?" Sophia asked suddenly, surprised by her own courage. "Why do you treat me like this?" Carmen stopped what she was doing, staring at her with a mixture of anger and something else, something like pain. "Because children like you need to learn that life isn't easy," she answered, her voice strangely controlled. "Do you think your princess life will last forever? That your father will always be there to protect you and give you everything you want?" Sophia didn't answer. It was true that her father gave her material comfort, but emotional protection, that was always lacking. "One day you will thank me," Carmen continued. "I'm teaching you lessons that no one else had the courage to teach. Discipline, hard work, resilience, things that will make you a strong person." "This isn't teaching," Sophia mumbled. "This is being cruel." Carmen's face contorted with fury. For a moment, it looked like she would hit Sophia again, but then she controlled herself. "Get to work. Now." Sophia started with the ground floor windows, using a small stepladder to reach the higher parts. She felt dizzy and weak, but she continued, fearing the consequences if she stopped. Around 10 in the morning, while cleaning a window that overlooked the side garden, she saw a car pull up in front of the house. It was Martha, her family's housekeeper. Sophia's heart raced. Maybe this was her chance to ask for help. She quickly climbed down from the ladder and ran to the front door, but Carmen was already there, intercepting the visitor. "Good morning, Martha," Carmen greeted, effectively blocking the entrance. "What brings you here?" "I came to bring some more of Sophia's things," Martha replied, holding a small backpack. "Mr. Sinclair called and asked me to bring some school books and clean clothes. May I see Sophia? She's busy at the moment, studying." Carmen lied. "I don't want to interrupt her concentration. You know how easily children get distracted." Sophia, hiding in the hallway, felt her desperation grow. She was so close to help, so close to someone who might notice her condition. "I insist on seeing her," Martha said with surprising firmness. "Mr. Sinclair asked me to check on her." Sophia saw a rare expression of uncertainty cross Carmen's face. Of course," she finally conceded, her fake smile returning. "I'll call her. Why don't you wait here on the porch? The sun is so lovely today." Carmen partially closed the door and turned, seeing Sophia in the hallway. Her face changed instantly, her eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. "You have exactly 1 minute with her," she hissed, grabbing Sophia's arm tightly. "If you say one word about our activities here, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. And remember, no one would believe you over me." Sophia swallowed hard, fear momentarily paralyzing her. "And smile," Carmen continued. "Look happy and well cared for, or your doll Lily will suffer the consequences." The mention of her mother's doll sent a wave of panic through Sophia. What would Carmen be capable of doing to the one object that connected her to the mother she never knew? Forcing a smile, Sophia went out onto the porch where Martha was waiting. The housekeeper frowned when she saw her. "Sophia, are you all right? You look pale." Sophia felt Carmen's presence right behind her, like a threatening shadow. "I'm fine, Martha," she replied, her voice tense. "Just a little tired. We've been studying a lot." Martha didn't seem convinced. Her experienced eyes scanned Sophia's body, noticing her thinner arms, the dark circles under her eyes, her abnormal pallor. "Are you eating properly?" she asked, gently placing a hand on the girl's face. "Of course she is," Carmen interjected with an artificial laugh. "3 full meals a day." "Isn't that right, Sophia?" Sophia nodded mechanically, her eyes fixed on Martha's, trying to silently convey her despair. The housekeeper seemed to catch on. She leaned in, hugging Sophia tightly. "Your father will be back soon," she murmured in her ear, so low that only Sophia could hear. "Hang in there. I'm going to call him today." Sophia felt a wave of hope. Martha had noticed. Someone had finally noticed that something was deeply wrong. The visit ended quickly, with Carmen practically pushing Martha out with excuses about Sophia's study schedule. As soon as the door closed, Carmen's smile vanished. "What did she say to you?" she demanded, grabbing Sophia by the shoulders. "Nothing," Sophia stammered. "Just that my dad is coming back soon." Carmen narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "If I find out you tried to ask for help—" "I didn't," Sophia protested, her fear giving her courage. "She just hugged me and said my dad is coming back soon." Carmen studied her for a long moment, trying to determine if she was telling the truth. "Get back to work," she finally ordered. "And forget this visit. No one is getting you out of here before it's time." Sophia returned to the windows, her heart a little lighter. Martha had noticed. She was going to call her father. Maybe he would come back early. Maybe the nightmare would end soon. The hope, however, was short-lived. Shortly after, she heard the phone ring. Carmen answered, and her syrupy voice filled the hallway. "Robert, so good to hear from you." "Yes, Sophia is great." "What? Come back today, but I thought you were only coming back on Sunday." "Oh, I see," the housekeeper called it concerned. No, she's perfectly fine. Just a little pale because she's been studying so much. Seasonal allergies, perhaps. There's no need to cut your trip short." I'm sure Martha exaggerated. Sophia's heart sank. Carmen was convincing her father not to come back early, and from the tone of the conversation, it seemed she was succeeding. "Of course, she can talk to you," Carmen continued, calling Sophia with a sharp gesture. "Here she is." She handed the phone to the girl, her eyes conveying a clear threat. "Dad?" Sophia said, her voice trembling. "Sophia, Martha called me and said you didn't look well. Is that true?" "Is something going on?" Sophia hesitated, Carmen's gaze boring into her like daggers. I'm fine, Dad. Just a little tired." "Are you sure? I can come back today if you need me to." Sophia wanted to scream, to beg him to come back, to tell him everything about Carmen's cruel treatment, but fear paralyzed her. And beyond the fear, there was also a corrosive doubt. Would her father believe her? Did he really care enough to confront someone like Carmen Harrington? "You don't have to, Dad," she finally replied. "Everything is fine." Martha exaggerated. She heard her father's sigh of relief. "Great, because we're about to close an important deal here. I'll be back on Sunday as planned. Behave yourself, okay?" "Yes, Dad." The call ended, and Carmen took the phone back, a triumphant smile on her face. "Very sensible," she commented. "Your father has more important things to do than worry about your fantasies of mistreatment. Now back to work, and you will not have lunch today, as punishment for trying to manipulate the situation with Martha." Sophia returned to her tasks, despair settling over her like a heavy cloud. Her own father wouldn't come back to save her. He had believed Carmen's smooth words without question, preferring to continue his business trip rather than personally check on his daughter's well-being. The afternoon dragged on painfully. Sophia worked mechanically, her weak body protesting every movement. When she reached the basement to organize it, her legs could barely support her. Hunger, exhaustion, and despair were consuming her from the inside. It was in this state that Lucas found her again, this time appearing at the small basement window that looked out onto the side garden. "Sophia?" he called softly, tapping on the glass. She turned, surprised and frightened. "Lucas, what are you doing here?" "I came to see how you are," he replied, concern evident on his young face. "You disappeared from the garden yesterday so suddenly, and you looked scared." Sophia glanced nervously at the basement stairs, fearing Carmen would appear at any moment. "You need to leave," she whispered. "She can't see us talking." "Why?" Lucas insisted. "What's happening? You don't look well, Sophia. You're so pale and thin." Sophia felt tears welling up. Someone was truly seeing what was happening. "She doesn't let me eat properly," she finally confessed, her voice choked with emotion. "She makes me work all day, and I'm scared of her, Lucas. Very scared." The boy's eyes widened. "That's abuse, Sophia. My mom is a doctor. She can help. I'm going to tell her right now." "No!" Sophia exclaimed in a panic. "Carmen will know it was me who told. She'll do something terrible." Lucas looked torn between the desire to help and the fear of making things worse. "At least let me bring you some food," he offered. "I can pass it through the window." Sophia hesitated, but hunger was stronger than fear. "Okay, but be quick and careful." Lucas disappeared and returned minutes later with a package wrapped in napkins. "Peanut butter and jelly sandwich," he explained, passing it through the window. "And an apple. It's not much, but it's what I could grab without my mum noticing." Sophia took the package with trembling hands, quickly hiding it under a pile of empty boxes. "Thank you, Lucas. You don't know how much this means." The boy smiled, but the worry remained in his eyes. "I'll try to come back tomorrow. And Sophia, if things get worse, scream as loud as you can. My house is really close. I'll hear you and bring help." With those words, he disappeared again, leaving Sophia with the precious package of food and a new spark of hope. When she was finally sure Carmen wasn't watching, she devoured the sandwich in desperate bites, savoring each piece as if it were the most exquisite delicacy in the world. She ate the apple more slowly, enjoying the fruit's sweetness, feeling some strength return to her exhausted body. The gesture from Lucas, a boy she barely knew, brought tears to her eyes. While her own father had abandoned her to her fate, a stranger had cared enough to take a risk for her. At night, when Carmen came with the strange medicine, Sophia was prepared. She pretended to swallow the liquid but kept it in her mouth, spitting it into the toilet as soon as she was alone. If she needed all her strength to survive this nightmare, she couldn't afford to be drugged. Lying in bed, still tasting Lucas's sandwich, Sophia made a plan. Tomorrow, she would find a way to ask for help more directly. Maybe she could write a note for Lucas to give to his doctor mother, or maybe she could convince Martha to come inside the house and see the conditions she was living in. In the meantime, she had to survive, and thanks to a 12-year-old boy with messy hair and kind eyes, she might just have a chance. On the morning of the 4th day, Sophia woke with a strange sense of determination. It was Saturday, the day her father had originally promised to take her to the museum. Tomorrow he would be back, and this nightmare would end. But the last 72 hours in Carmen Harrington's house had changed something fundamental within her. She could no longer wait passively for rescue. She had to act. She went down for breakfast punctually at 6, finding Carmen already dressed and put together, as if for an important engagement. "We have a different schedule today," Carmen announced. "Serving the usual tiny portion of oatmeal. I have a charity event at 10. You will come with me." Sophia looked up, surprised. "I'm going out with you." "Don't get so excited," Carmen replied coldly. "It's only because I don't trust leaving you here alone after your attempts at communicating with the neighbors." Sophia kept her face impassive, though inside her heart was racing. Leaving the house meant an opportunity to ask someone for help. Perhaps there would be other people at the event who might notice her weakened state. "Dress appropriately," Carmen continued. "The blue dress you brought. I want you to look like a well-cared-for child. And if anyone asks, you will say that you are happy here, that we've had a lot of fun, and that you eat very well." "Understood?" "Yes," Sophia answered automatically, already planning how she could use this outing to her advantage. "If you do or say anything to embarrass me," Carmen added, leaning over the table, I will make sure your precious father knows what a terrible guest you've been. I'll tell him you broke valuable items, that you were rude, that you made up stories to get attention. And as for your doll, well, accidents happen. The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sophia nodded silently, but her determination did not waver. 4 days in that hell had taught her that Carmen Harrington was a cruel woman who hid her true nature under a mask of social respectability. And if Sophia didn't do something, other children could suffer the same fate. At 9:30, they were ready to leave. Sophia wore the blue dress her father had packed, now visibly loose on her emaciated frame. Carmen inspected her critically. "You're very pale," she commented, grabbing a makeup case. "Let's give those cheeks a bit of color." Sophia remained still as Carmen applied blush to her thin cheeks, trying to disguise the obvious signs of malnutrition. It was bizarre how the woman seemed concerned with appearances, but not with a child's actual well-being. "Remember," Carmen said, as she drove her luxury car through the tree-lined streets of the Upper East Side, "you are happy, healthy, and well-fed. If anyone asks about your stay, talk about the books we read and the games we played. Nothing about housework or denied meals. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Sophia replied mechanically. The charity event was held in an elegant ballroom at a 5-star hotel. Dozens of well-dressed people circulated with champagne glasses, chatting animatedly about their donations to underprivileged children. The irony of the situation was not lost on Sophia. Here was Carmen, being celebrated for her supposed generosity, while mistreating a child under her care. As soon as they entered, Carmen was immediately surrounded by admirers. She was clearly an important figure in that social circle. "Carmen, darling," exclaimed an elegant lady. "How wonderful to see you. And who is this lovely little girl?" "This is Sophia, the daughter of my neighbor, Robert Sinclair," Carmen introduced, placing a possessive hand on Sophia's shoulder. "I'm looking after her while he's away on business." "How kind of you," the lady replied, smiling at Sophia. "And are you enjoying your stay with Aunt Carmen, dear?" Sophia felt the grip on her shoulder tighten, a silent warning. "Yes, ma'am," she answered politely. "We've been reading a lot." "How wonderful. Carmen always had a special way with children. I remember how dedicated she was at the orphanage, where she used to volunteer." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. Orphanage. Carmen had worked with other vulnerable children. As the event progressed, Sophia was introduced to dozens of important people, politicians, business leaders, socialites. They all praised Carmen's generosity for taking care of her neighbor's daughter. No one seemed to notice how thin Sophia was under her loose dress, or how her smile never reached her eyes. At one point, when Carmen was distracted talking to a city councilman, Sophia took the opportunity to slip away. She grabbed a napkin and, with a pen left on a table, quickly wrote, "Help, I am being mistreated. Sophia Sinclair, Carmen Harrington's house." She folded the paper and looked for someone who might help her. Her eyes found a younger woman who seemed different from the others. She was dressed more simply, observed everything with an analytical gaze, and took notes in a small notepad. A journalist, perhaps. Sophia approached cautiously. "Hi," she said in a low voice. "Are you a journalist?" The woman smiled, surprised by the direct approach. "I am Gabriella Hayes, from the New York Chronicle. And who are you?" "Sophia Sinclair. I'm with Carmen Harrington." The journalist's eyes lit up with interest. "Ah, the famous philanthropist. Are you related to her?" "No. I'm staying at her house while my dad is away." Sophia glanced nervously in Carmen's direction, who was still chatting animatedly. "I need help." Gabriella frowned, sensing something in the girl's urgent tone. "Help? What's wrong?" Sophia discreetly held out the folded napkin. "Please, read this later. And if you can, call my father, Robert Sinclair. He owns Sinclair Tech." The journalist took the napkin with a puzzled expression, but before she could say anything more, Carmen appeared beside Sophia, smiling tensely. "I see you've met our little Sophia," she said, putting an arm around the girl's shoulders with unnecessary force. "I hope she isn't bothering you, Miss, Gabriella Hayes, from the New York Chronicle. The journalist introduced herself, studying the interaction with sharp eyes. Sophia isn't bothering me at all. In fact, we were having a very interesting conversation. Something in Gabriella's gaze made it clear she had picked up on the strange dynamic between the two. Sophia felt a flash of hope. Sophia has a very vivid imagination, Carmen commented with a forced laugh. She sometimes makes up stories to get attention, a trait of children who don't receive enough attention from their parents. The insinuation against Robert was clear, a preemptive tactic to discredit anything Sophia might have said. I imagine, Gabriella replied, discreetly pocketing the napkin. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you both. I'm sure we'll meet again. With a final, meaningful look at Sophia, the journalist moved away, blending into the crowd. Carmen immediately leaned in, whispering furiously in Sophia's ear. What did you say to her? What did you do? Nothing, Sophia lied, feeling a sudden courage. I just told her my name. Carmen squeezed her arm so hard that Sophia had to bite her lip to keep from crying out. We're leaving now. She dragged Sophia out of the ballroom, ignoring the greetings and farewells of her social admirers. In the car, the silence was heavy and menacing. Sophia could feel Carmen's anger radiating like heat from an oven. When they arrived at the mansion, Carmen practically yanked Sophia inside, throwing her onto the living room sofa. What did you give that journalist? She demanded, her face contorted with fury. Sophia remained silent, refusing to confirm Carmen's suspicions. The slap came with full force, snapping her head to the side. Pain exploded in her cheek, but Sophia didn't cry. Something inside her had hardened over the past few days. Answer me, Carmen screamed, completely losing her composure. I didn't give her anything, Sophia answered, her voice trembling but determined. Carmen studied her for a long moment, her eyes narrowed into slits of suspicion. You are not leaving this house again, she finally declared, and when your father arrives tomorrow, I will tell him what a problematic child you've been, making up stories and trying to slander me after everything I've done for you. Sophia stared back at Carmen with a new kind of defiance in her eyes. My dad won't believe you, Carmen laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Your dad? The one who would rather close business deals than come home early to check on you. The one who left you with a near stranger without a second thought. Why do you think he would believe you over me, a respected member of the community? The words hit Sophia like poisoned darts, because they contained a painful truth. Her father had always put work first. Why would it be different now? To your room, Carmen ordered. No dinner for you tonight, and tomorrow, before your father arrives, we will have a long talk about what you will and will not say to him. Sophia walked up the stairs slowly, her legs weak from hunger and emotional exhaustion. In her Spartan room, she sat on the edge of the bed, trying not to let despair overwhelm her. She had managed to pass the note to the journalist. It was a direct line to the outside world. Maybe Gabriella Hayes would call her father today. Maybe someone would come before tomorrow. The sun began to set, casting long shadows in the small room. Sophia heard the sound of the key turning in the lock. She was locked in again, without dinner, without water, with nothing but the clothes on her back and her thoughts. She lay down on the bed, closing her eyes. She was so weak she could barely stay awake. Just as she was about to fall asleep, she heard a soft sound at the window. Tap, tap, tap. She opened her eyes, turning towards the source of the noise. Lucas was there, outside, balanced precariously on a ladder. With an effort, Sophia got up and went to the window, opening it silently. Lucas, what are you doing here? It's dangerous. I didn't see you in the garden today, he explained, breathless from the effort. I got worried. I brought you this. He held out a larger package than the day before, carefully passing it through the window. Sophia took it, feeling the comforting weight of real food. Thank you, she murmured, the tears finally breaking through her resistance. You don't know how much this means. Sophia, I told my mom, Lucas admitted, his expression serious, about how you're being treated. She didn't totally believe me, said Mrs. Harrington is a respected person, but she's worried. She said she's going to call your dad tomorrow. Sophia nodded, wiping away her tears. That might be too late. He's coming to get me tomorrow, and Carmen will convince him that I'm a liar, that I made it all up. Lucas frowned, thinking, what if we could prove it? Do you have a phone or something? Sophia shook her head. My dad won't let me have a cell phone yet. He says I'm too young. I have an idea, Lucas said, fumbling in his pockets. I brought this for you. It was a small digital voice recorder, the kind used for recording lectures or interviews. It's my mum's. She uses it to record consultations sometimes. It has room for hours of recording. If you can get Carmen to admit how she treated you. Sophia took the recorder, a new plan forming in her mind. Lucas, you're a genius. I have to go before they see me here, he said, starting down the ladder. Good luck, Sophia, and if you need anything, thank you for everything, she replied, carefully closing the window. With the recorder safe in her pocket and the package of food hidden under her mattress, Sophia felt reinvigorated. There were people on the outside who cared, who believed her. She was no longer alone against Carmen. She slowly ate what Lucas had brought, 2 sandwiches, an apple, a yogurt, and even a small piece of chocolate. Each bite restored not only her physical strength, but also her determination. When she finished, she carefully hid the wrappers and tested the recorder, making sure it worked. Tomorrow would be the final confrontation with Carmen, and this time she would be prepared. The dawn of Sunday arrived with a palpable tension. Sophia woke before the usual bell, refreshed by the food and unmedicated sleep. This would be her last day in Carmen Harrington's house, and she was determined not to leave without proof of what she had suffered. She dressed quickly and checked the recorder one more time, working perfectly. She hid it in the pocket of her dress, making sure the small microphone was positioned to pick up voices clearly. At 6 o'clock sharp, she went down to the kitchen. Carmen was already there, but she seemed different. There was a tension in her movements, a nervousness Sophia had never seen before. Your father called, Carmen announced, serving the usual tiny portion of oatmeal. He arrives at 2 this afternoon. Sophia nodded silently, eating her meal. The hunger no longer tormented her as much, thanks to Lucas's generosity, but she maintained a resigned expression so as not to arouse suspicion. We need to talk about what you will tell him, Carmen continued, sitting across from her, about your stay here. At that moment, Sophia discreetly turned on the recorder in her pocket. What do you want me to say? She asked, keeping her voice low and submissive. That you had a lot of fun, that we read together, played games, cooked, that you ate very well, 3 full meals a day, that I was kind and attentive, understood. But none of that is true, Sophia replied, testing the waters. You made me work like a servant. You left me hungry. You locked me in my room. Carmen's eyes flashed dangerously. What does the truth matter? Do you really think your father will believe you? A child against a respected adult. Why did you do this to me? Sophia asked, genuinely curious. What did I do to deserve this treatment? Something strange happened then. Carmen's face changed, a mixture of anger and something else, something that almost looked like pain. You did nothing, she answered, her voice unexpectedly low. It's not about you, it never was. What is it about then? Carmen stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Children like you, spoiled, privileged, clueless about the real world. Do you think you'll have everything in life handed to you on a silver platter? I'm 9 years old, Sophia protested, gaining courage. I shouldn't have to clean an entire house or starve to learn about the real world. I was 8 when I started working, Carmen retorted, a feverish glint in her eyes. Cleaning houses, washing clothes, taking care of younger children. No one cared if I was tired or hungry. No one gave me expensive dolls or rooms full of toys. Sophia was beginning to understand. There was a twisted pattern in Carmen's logic. She wasn't simply cruel. She was projecting her own painful past. But that wasn't fair to you, Sophia said carefully. And it's not fair to me now. Life isn't fair, Carmen exclaimed. That's what I'm trying to teach you. I'm doing a favor to you and all the spoiled children like you, preparing you for reality by hurting them, by strengthening them, Carmen corrected, slamming her hand on the table. At the orphanage, I saw so many children unprepared for the world, waiting for someone to save them. No one saves anyone. You have to learn to save yourself. Sophia remembered the mention of the orphanage at the charity event. A piece of the puzzle fell into place. You worked at an orphanage, as a volunteer. Carmen's face hardened. Yes, for years. I helped discipline those children, taught them values, hard work, respect, gratitude, the same way you did with me. Much more gently with you, Carmen replied with a cold smile. You have no idea what real discipline is. Those children at the orphanage received much harsher punishments. It was necessary, for their own good. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine. How many other children had suffered at the hands of this woman, and did anyone know? How you treated me, how you treated those children. Carmen laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Who would care? The orphanage director appreciated my methods. Discipline is essential, she would say. As for the few complaints, well, who would believe troubled orphans over a respected volunteer, just as no one will believe you over me? Sophia felt the recorder weighing in her pocket. Every word was being recorded. Have you done this before? She asked, keeping her voice calm despite her growing horror. Taken care of children to mistreat them like this? A disturbing smile crossed Carmen's face. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. People love leaving their children with me. So helpful, so generous, she mimicked in a high-pitched voice. They have no idea what a service I'm doing for their precious children, teaching them the value of hard work and discipline. That's not educating, Sophia said, with a maturity beyond her years. That's being cruel. You're hurting children because someone hurt you one day. Carmen's face twisted in fury. She lunged at Sophia, grabbing her by the arms and shaking her violently. You know nothing, nothing. I am the only honest person in these children's lives, the only one who shows them what the world is really like. Their parents fill them with illusions. I show them the truth. Sophia didn't flinch, even in pain. She continued to look directly into Carmen's eyes. The truth is that you're sick. You need help. What happened to you as a child was terrible, but it doesn't justify doing the same to other children. For a moment, something wavered in Carmen's eyes, a shadow of doubt, perhaps even regret. But it quickly vanished, replaced by the usual cold mask. Go to your room, she ordered, releasing Sophia abruptly. Stay there until your father arrives, and remember, if you say one word about what happened here, I will make your life a living hell. I have enough influence to do it. Sophia stood up, still maintaining eye contact. You can't hurt anyone else if people know the truth. With those words, she slowly walked up to her room, making sure the recorder was still running. When she heard the door lock behind her, she finally turned off the device and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had done it. She had Carmen's confession. Her own words admitting to the abuse, not just against Sophia, but against several other vulnerable children. It was enough evidence for someone to believe her. Maybe not her father, but certainly the police, or social services, or the journalist Gabriella Hayes. She sat on the bed, the adrenaline slowly leaving her body, replaced by the accumulated exhaustion of 4 days of hunger and forced labor. But there was also a new, different feeling. Pride. She had faced her tormentor, had maintained her composure and dignity even in the face of abuse. She had refused to be broken. The hours passed slowly. Sophia remained seated on the bed, listening to the sounds of the house, Carmen's footsteps, the phone ringing occasionally. She wondered what would happen when her father arrived. Would she tell him everything immediately, show him the recording, or would she wait to see if he would notice the changes in her, if he would realize on his own that something was terribly wrong? Around noon, she heard a car pull up. It was too early to be her father. She ran to the window, peeking carefully. It was a car she didn't recognize, and a woman was getting out of it. It took her a few seconds to recognize her. It was Gabriella Hayes, the journalist from the charity event. Sophia's heart raced. She had gotten the note. She had come to investigate. She pressed herself against the window, trying to get her attention, but Gabriella was already walking decisively to the front door. Minutes later, Sophia heard raised voices downstairs. She couldn't make out the exact words, but the tone was unmistakable. Carmen was furious, and Gabriella seemed equally determined. The argument lasted about 10 minutes, until Sophia heard the front door slam shut violently. Soon after, Furious footsteps came up the stairs. The key turned in the lock, and Carmen burst into the room, her face a mask of hatred. "What did you do?" she hissed, advancing on Sophia. "What did you write on that paper?" Sophia backed away to the wall, instinctively protecting the pocket where the recorder was. "The truth," she replied, keeping her voice firm despite her fear. "What you've been doing to me. You ungrateful brat." Carmen grabbed Sophia by the shoulders, shaking her violently. "After everything I did for you. I agreed to take care of you, gave you a roof and food. You starved me," Sophia protested, trying to break free. "You worked me to exhaustion. You hit me." "Discipline," Carmen screamed. "That's what children like you need. But you never understand, you're never grateful." The sound of another car pulling up interrupted her rage. Carmen let go of Sophia abruptly, going to the window. "It's your father," she said, her voice suddenly controlled. 2 o'clock sharp. So predictable. She turned to Sophia, fixing her own hair and clothes, instantly reassuming her mask of social respectability. "Not a word about these past few days," she warned, "or you will regret it. Understand?" Sophia didn't answer, keeping her eyes fixed on Carmen's. Something in her posture, in her defiant gaze, seemed to unnerve the woman. "You don't scare me anymore," Sophia said simply. Carmen narrowed her eyes but had no time to respond. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of Robert Sinclair. With one last threatening look at Sophia, Carmen left the room, leaving the door open this time, and went downstairs to greet the girl's father. Sophia took a deep breath, touching the recorder in her pocket to make sure it was still there. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time she was prepared. She had evidence. She had her dignity intact, and most importantly, she had her truth. Slowly, she descended the stairs, listening to the voices coming from the living room. Carmen's soft, fake voice, full of feigned concern, and her father's voice, deep and tired. The man who had left her with a near stranger to close an important deal. The man who hadn't returned even when Martha had expressed concern. The man who, unknowingly, had put his own daughter in danger. Did he really care? Would he notice how thin, pale, and different she was? Or would he accept Carmen's version without question, relieved to be able to return to his work routine without complications? Sophia stopped at the threshold of the living room, observing the scene for a moment before being noticed. Her father had his back to her, talking to Carmen, who was smiling her perfect social smile. "Sophia," Carmen exclaimed, noticing her first. "Look who's here. Your father is back." Robert turned, and for the first time in 4 days, Sophia saw her father. For a brief instant, their eyes met, and she saw something she had never noticed before, a flicker of genuine love and concern. And in that moment, Sophia knew that, regardless of what happened next, something fundamental had changed forever, both in her and in her relationship with her father. "What is this?" Robert asked, confused. "A recorder," Sophia replied. Suddenly feeling older than her 9 years, "Lucas, the doctor neighbor's son, gave it to me yesterday. I recorded my conversation with Carmen this morning." Carmen's face transformed into a mask of pure horror. "You wouldn't dare." Sophia pressed the play button. Carmen's voice filled the room. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. People love leaving their children with me. So helpful, so generous. They have no idea what a service I'm doing for their precious children, teaching them the value of hard work and discipline." Robert listened in silence, his face hardening with every word. The recording continued, revealing not only the treatment Sophia had received, but also Carmen's admissions about her past at the orphanage and her pattern of behavior with other children. When the recording ended, the silence that followed was deafening. Robert looked at Carmen as if seeing her for the first time, not the respectable philanthropist, but the cruel, disturbed person hiding beneath that facade. "How could you?" he finally asked, his voice low with disbelief. "She was a child entrusted to your care. My daughter." Carmen took a step back, realizing her mask had completely fallen away. "You don't understand," she said, her voice now devoid of its previous syrupy tone. "Children like her need to be prepared for the real world. You modern parents, you spoil them, create weak, dependent people. Get out of my sight, Robert interrupted, grabbing Sophia's suitcase and the doll, Lily. Sophia, we're going home. This isn't over, Carmen threatened, her face contorted with rage. I have influence in this city. I can make your lives a living hell. Robert paused at the bedroom door, turning to face her. This recording is going straight to the police and to Child Protective Services. And if you ever come near my daughter again, or try any kind of retaliation, rest assured I will use every penny I have to make sure you never get near a child again. They went down the stairs in silence, Sophia holding her father's hand tightly, still barely believing the nightmare was over. When they reached the front door, they found a surprise. Martha, Lucas, and a woman Sophia presumed to be Dr. Wallace, Lucas's mother, were standing on the porch looking worried. We came to see how Sophia is, Martha explained, relief evident on her face as she saw the girl with her father. We were worried. You had every right to be, Robert replied gravely. But we're going home now. Lucas smiled at Sophia, who returned his look with one of deep gratitude. Without him, his support and the recorder, she might never have been able to prove what Carmen had done. I'm Helena Wallace, the older woman introduced herself, a pediatrician. My son Lucas was very worried about Sophia. I realized something was wrong when he told me about a little girl working in the garden with blistered hands. I came to offer medical assistance if needed. Thank you, doctor, Robert answered. I think we'll need it. Sophia has been through a lot these past few days. Upon arriving home, Sophia felt an indescribable relief at the sight of the familiar spaces, her room with all her belongings, the sense of security she had never valued so much before. Dr. Wallace performed a full examination, diagnosing mild malnutrition, dehydration, and exhaustion. She recommended small, frequent meals, plenty of fluids, and, above all, rest. While Sophia finally took a hot bath and put on her favorite pajamas, Robert made calls to the police, to a lawyer crying to a child therapist. The wheels of justice were beginning to turn, slowly but with determination. That night, something extraordinary happened. Robert sat on the edge of Sophia's bed, truly present for the first time in years. I failed you, he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't protect you like I should have. Sophia, clutching her doll. Lily looked at her father with new eyes. No longer the distant businessman concerned only with deals, but an imperfect man capable of admitting his mistakes. It's okay, Dad, she replied, surprising herself with the forgiveness she felt. You came when I needed you. You believed me. It shouldn't have had to get to that point, Robert insisted, running a hand through his graying hair. I pulled away after your mother, after we lost her. It was easier to throw myself into work than to deal with the pain, the responsibilities. Easier to hire people to take care of you than to face the fact that I didn't know how to be a father on my own. Sophia had never heard him speak like this, so openly about the mother she never knew, about his own fears and failings. You can learn, she said, with the wisdom her recent experiences had given her. I can teach you. A single tear rolled down Robert's face, which he quickly wiped away. It's a deal, he replied, holding out his hand for a formal shake that made Sophia smile. From today on, we're a real team, I promise. In the days that followed, many things changed in the Sinclair household. Robert cancelled business trips, delegated responsibilities, and reorganized his schedule to be more present. He began to actively participate in Sophia's routine, taking her to school, helping with her homework, listening to her talk about her day. Sophia began sessions with a child psychologist specializing in trauma, a safe space where she could process what she had experienced at Carmen's house. Slowly, the emotional wounds began to heal, just like the physical ones on her small hands. As for Carmen Harrington, justice took its course. Sophia's recording, combined with testimony from former employees and an investigation into her past at the orphanage, revealed a disturbing pattern of abuse against vulnerable children that stretched back for years. Other families began to come forward with similar stories of children who had been in Carmen's care and returned traumatized, but whose accounts had been dismissed as childish imagination or attention-seeking. The respected figure of New York society saw her reputation crumble. She lost her positions on community boards, invitations to charity events, and the respect of her neighbors. The justice system ensured she would never work with children in any capacity again. A month after the events at Carmen's house, Sophia received an unexpected visitor. Lucas came with his mother, bringing a gift, a diary with a lock, for you to write down your thoughts, he explained, slightly embarrassed. My mom says it helps to organize what we feel. Sophia hugged him tightly, eternally grateful to the boy who had been her only ally in her darkest days. Thank you, Lucas, for everything. Their friendship blossomed, with afternoons of games and conversation, snacks shared without fear or restriction. Sophia was now allowed to go to Lucas's house under the watchful and loving supervision of Dr. Wallace, a woman who represented everything Carmen was not: kind, patient, and genuinely concerned with child welfare. Gabriella Hayes, the journalist who had received Sophia's desperate note at the charity event, published a series of investigative reports on the case, taking care to protect Sophia's identity but exposing the system that had allowed Carmen to operate with impunity for so long. Her work raised important questions about how society often ignores the voices of children, especially when they are up against respected adults. On a particularly sunny Saturday afternoon, 3 months after the events at Carmen's house, Robert finally fulfilled his promise to take Sophia to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They walked hand in hand, looking at the paintings, when Sophia stopped in front of a piece showing a small girl sitting alone. She looked sad, Robert commented, observing his daughter's thoughtful expression. No, Sophia disagreed, surprising him. She's waiting for someone to see that she's there. Robert knelt down again to be at his daughter's eye level, a gesture he now made often. I see you, Sophia, he said, with simplicity and truth. Every day, I see you. Sophia smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her eyes in a way it hadn't for a long time. Her body had regained a healthy weight, her cheeks had color again, and the sparkle had returned to her gaze. I know, Dad. I see you too. They continued their walk through the museum, stopping for ice cream afterward, talking about art and school and plans for the future. Robert had cut back his work hours, delegated more responsibilities, and rethought his priorities. Sinclair Tech continued to thrive, but now there were clear boundaries between work and family. That night, as Robert tucked her in, another ritual that had become sacred, Sophia asked a question she had been holding on to. Dad, do you think Carmen will ever be okay? Robert seemed surprised by the question. Why do you care about her after everything she did? Sophia thought for a moment, hugging Lily to her chest. Because she was hurt when she was a child, too. That's what she said. Someone hurt her, and she thought it was normal to hurt other people. That's very sad. Robert looked at his daughter with admiration. In her 9 years, Sophia showed a compassion and wisdom that many adults never achieve. I don't know if she'll be okay, he answered honestly. But I know that you will be because you chose not to become like her. You chose compassion, even after everything. Sophia smiled, closing her eyes, feeling safe and loved. Good night, Dad. Good night, my brave girl. As Sophia drifted off to sleep, Robert remained by her bedside for a few more minutes, watching his daughter's serene face. He thought of the wife he had lost, of how proud she would be of the girl Sophia was becoming. He thought of the lost years of emotional distance, of the near disaster his negligence had caused, and he made a silent promise, not just to Sophia, but to himself. He would never again confuse professional success with success in life. He would never again put anything above his daughter's well-being and happiness. The next morning, Sunday, dawned bright and promising. Sophia woke to the smell of pancakes, her favorite breakfast, and the sound of Robert humming in the kitchen, something unthinkable just a few months before. She came down the stairs, still in her pajamas, her hair tousled, but with a radiant smile. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Sophia. Pancakes with chocolate syrup, just how you like them. They sat at the table, no longer as a busy entrepreneur and a neglected daughter, but as a family. A real family, rebuilt from the ashes of a near tragedy, stronger for the trials they had faced. "Dad," Sophia said between bites of pancake, "thank you for believing me that day." Robert reached across the table, taking Sophia's small hand in his. "I will always believe you, always. And thank you for giving me a second chance to be your father." The sun streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating the shared moment. In the mansion on the Upper East Side, two people who had nearly lost each other had found their way back. And though the world outside continued with its challenges and difficulties, within those walls something precious had been born. An understanding that true worth wasn't in million-dollar contracts or social status, but in the bonds we build with those we love. Sophia looked at her father and knew, with the certainty that only a child who has faced the dark and survived can have, that no matter what came next, she would never be alone again. 6 months had passed since the events at Carmen Harrington's house. Spring had arrived in New York, bringing with it the rebirth that the season promises. For Sophia and Robert Sinclair, this rebirth was not just metaphorical. It was the reality of their transformed lives. The mansion on the Upper East Side, once too spacious and strangely silent, now pulsed with new energy. The changes were evident to any visitor. Photographs of Sophia and Robert on recent outings decorated the walls once occupied only by abstract art and business certificates. Children's books shared space with financial reports on the shelves, and the sounds of laughter and conversation had replaced the oppressive silence that once reigned. On that Saturday afternoon, Sophia was sitting in the garden with her new diary, the third since Lucas had given her the first. At her recently celebrated 10th birthday, her face had regained the healthy glow of childhood. She wrote with concentration, her tongue sticking out slightly, a habit she had whenever she was deeply involved in a task. "What are you writing with such dedication?" Robert asked, approaching with a tray of lemonade and cookies. Sophia closed the diary with an enigmatic smile. "It's a secret. Dr. Evans says some thoughts are just for us until we decide to share them." Robert smiled, respecting his daughter's space. The sessions with the child psychologist, Dr. Patricia Evans, had become an essential part of Sophia's routine. What had started as therapy to deal with the trauma from Carmen's house had evolved into a valuable space for her emotional development. "Fair enough, I completely respect your secrets," Robert replied, pouring lemonade for them both. "I just hope you're not planning a revolution against the tyranny of the bedtime I've established." Sophia laughed, a crystal-clear sound that always warmed Robert's heart. "Not yet, but don't rule it out." They sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the sunny afternoon. In the distance, they could see Carmen Harrington's house. It had been for sale for months, with no buyers. It was as if the building itself carried the stain of its former owner's actions. "Do you still think about her?" Robert asked, noticing the direction of his daughter's gaze. Sophia reflected for a moment before answering. "Sometimes not with fear, like before. Now I think of her with pity, I guess." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "Dr. Evans says that people who hurt others are usually very hurt inside themselves." Robert watched his daughter with silent admiration. In moments like this, Sophia showed a wisdom far beyond her 10 years. "That's very generous of you to think that way," he commented. "It's not about forgiving what she did," Sophia clarified quickly. "It's just understanding, I think. Understanding isn't the same as excusing. Your mother would be so proud of the person you're becoming," Robert said, his voice slightly choked. The mention of her mother, once a topic avoided at all costs, now came up naturally in their conversations. It was another significant change of the past few months. Robert had begun sharing memories of Marina with Sophia, building for his daughter an image of the mother she never knew. The moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Sophia jumped from her chair, always excited by visitors. "It must be Lucas. He said he was coming to show me pictures from his trip to Yellowstone." She ran to the door, followed by Robert at a calmer pace, but it wasn't Lucas waiting for them. At the door stood Gabriella Hayes, the journalist who had been instrumental in exposing Carmen Harrington's case. "Good afternoon," she greeted with a professional smile. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I tried calling but couldn't get through." "Miss Hayes," Robert replied, surprised. "Please, come in." Sophia looked at the journalist with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. After the events at Carmen's house, Gabriella had published a series of investigative reports on child abuse hidden behind facades of social respectability. Her work had won a major journalism award and started a national conversation on the topic. "Sophia, how are you?" Gabriella asked with genuine interest. "Much better," the girl replied with a smile. "I really liked your articles, especially the one about children no one believes. It was important." Gabriella seemed touched by the comment. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Robert invited the journalist to sit in the living room, offering coffee, which she readily accepted. Sophia stayed, curious about the reason for the visit. "I imagine this isn't just a social call," Robert commented, after the housekeeper brought the coffee. Gabriella nodded, placing her cup on the table. "I have some news I thought you'd want to hear in person before it hits the press tomorrow." Sophia and Robert exchanged an apprehensive look. "About Carmen Harrington?" Sophia asked, verbalizing what they were both thinking. "Yes," Gabriella confirmed. "She's accepted a plea deal with the district attorney's office. She'll perform supervised community service and undergo mandatory psychological treatment." "Community service," Robert repeated, clearly dissatisfied. "After everything she did?" "I understand your frustration," Gabriella replied. "But there's more. As part of the deal, she has officially confessed to all the abuse, not just against Sophia, but against 7 other children over the years, including those at the orphanage where she volunteered." Sophia felt a shiver. 7 other children had gone through what she had, or worse. The confession was crucial, the journalist continued. It allowed the court to permanently ban her from working with children in any capacity. She will also have to pay compensation to the victims and make substantial donations to child protection organizations. Robert nodded slowly, processing the information. "And most importantly," Gabriella added, turning to Sophia, "your courage in speaking out, in recording that conversation, is what made all this possible. You inspired other victims to come forward." Sophia didn't know how to respond. She felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. "The other children, are they okay?" she finally asked. The question, so characteristic of Sophia's empathy, made Gabriella smile tenderly. "They're getting help, just like you. Some were older, it happened years ago. Others were recent. But they are all on the path to recovery thanks to your example." Robert placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, a silent gesture of pride. "There's one more thing," Gabriella said, pulling an envelope from her bag. "Carmen wrote this for you." "Sophia, the psychiatric team evaluating her suggested it as part of her therapeutic process. You're not obligated to read it." "Of course." She held out the envelope to Sophia, who looked at it hesitantly. Her name was written on the front in an elegant script she immediately recognized. "Do you want to read it?" Robert asked, concerned. "You don't have to do it now, or ever, if you don't want to." Sophia took the envelope, feeling its weight. Not physical, but emotional. "I'll read it," she decided after a moment. "But later, when I'm ready." Gabriella nodded in approval. A wise decision, no rush. The journalist stayed a while longer, explaining other developments in the case. How Child Protective Services had strengthened its verification protocols. How Sophia's experience had inspired an awareness program in schools. How the process had exposed flaws in the system that had allowed Carmen to operate with impunity for so long. When Gabriella finally left, promising to stay in touch, Sophia went up to her room, Carmen's envelope held securely in her hands. She sat on her bed, next to Lily, the doll that now occupied a special place on her shelf, no longer an everyday toy, but a symbol of resilience and connection to the mother she never knew. The envelope remained sealed that day, and the next. Sophia kept it in her desk drawer, knowing the right time to open it would come. 2 weeks passed. Life continued at its new and improved pace. Robert balanced work and family with a dedication that surprised even his business partners. Sophia thrived at school, made new friends, and continued her sessions with Dr. Evans. Lucas came over regularly for afternoons of games and reading, their friendship strengthened by their shared experiences. It was on a Sunday afternoon, after a special lunch to celebrate one of Sophia's school achievements, first place in a writing contest, that she finally felt ready. "Dad," she said, as she helped dry the lunch dishes, something she insisted on doing as part of her normal routine, no longer as forced labor. "I think I want to read the letter today." Robert stopped what he was doing, giving his daughter his full attention. "Are you sure? Do you want me to read it with you?" Sophia considered the offer. "I want to read it alone first. Then if I want to, I can share it with you." "As you wish," Robert replied, respecting her autonomy. "I'll be in the living room if you need me." Sophia went up to her room, took the envelope from the drawer, and sat comfortably in her reading chair, a recent gift from her father. Carefully, she opened the envelope and unfolded the 2 handwritten pages. "Sophia, I write this letter with no expectation of forgiveness or understanding. There is no justification for what I did to you, a child entrusted to my care. But following the guidance of the professionals who are now treating me, I will try to explain, not to excuse myself, but so that perhaps one day you might find some peace. I grew up in circumstances not very different from what I imposed on you. My childhood was marked by adults who confused discipline with cruelty, deprivation with education. At 8 years old, I was already working in people's homes, always under the threat of punishment if I did not achieve the required perfection. Hunger, isolation, humiliation. These were my first lessons about the world. When I finally managed to escape that life, I promised myself I would be different. I built a facade of respectability, gained social standing, and surrounded myself with people who admired a version of me that was not real. But the wounded girl inside me was never helped, never heard. I began volunteering at the orphanage, genuinely believing I was doing good, that I was preparing those children for a world I knew to be cruel and unforgiving. Slowly, I reproduced the same cycle of abuse I had suffered, convinced it was necessary, that it was even a form of protection. With you, it was no different. I saw a girl who had everything I never had, material comfort, opportunities, a father who, though absent, clearly cared. Something inside me revolted. Why did you deserve what I never had? Why should you be spared the hard lessons I learned? Today, with professional help, I am beginning to understand that I was perpetuating a sick cycle, that I mistook my trauma for wisdom, that I projected onto you and other children the anger and pain I never knew how to properly process. I do not expect your forgiveness, Sophia. What I did is unforgivable, but I want you to know that your courage changed lives, including my own. You had the strength I never had, the strength to speak, to resist, to break the cycle. Thanks to you, I am finally facing my own demons, trying to understand how I became the kind of person I feared most as a child. If there is anything positive I can offer, after all the harm I've caused, it is the promise that I am working to ensure I will never hurt another child again, and the acknowledgement that you, at 9 years old, showed more courage and integrity than I have in my entire adult life. You deserve all the happiness the future holds. Carmen Harrington. Sophia finished reading, tears streaming silently down her face. They were not tears of sadness or fear, like so many she had shed in Carmen's house. They were tears of understanding, of a kind of closure she hadn't known she needed. She carefully folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. She went downstairs and found her father in the living room, reading a book, another recently rediscovered habit. "Are you okay?" he asked. Noticing her tear-filled eyes, Sophia nodded, sitting beside him on the sofa. "Can I tell you something I learned from the letter?" "Of course. Sometimes the people who need help the most are the ones who have the hardest time asking for it. Carmen was a girl like me, who no one protected, and she turned into someone who hurt other children because she never learned another way." Robert looked at his daughter with renewed admiration. "And what do you think about that?" Sophia reflected for a moment. "I think it could have happened to me, too, if you hadn't believed me that day, if no one had helped me. Maybe one day I would have also confused being strong with being cruel." Robert felt a tightness in his chest at the thought of what might have happened if he had ignored the signs, if he had continued to prioritize work over family. "But it didn't," he said, holding his daughter's hand, "because you are stronger than I ever was. Stronger than Carmen. You asked for help, you resisted, you didn't let what happened define who you are. Sophia smiled through her remaining tears. It was because of you, too. Because you listened to me, even when it would have been easier not to. They sat in silence for a moment, the mutual understanding deeper than words. Do you know what I'd like most right now? Sophia asked, changing the subject. What? Chocolate ice cream with extra syrup. Can we go to that ice cream parlor in the park? Robert laughed, relieved by his daughter's ability to process profound experiences and still maintain the joy of childhood. I think that's a perfect idea. As they walked through the park, enjoying their chocolate ice creams, Robert noticed how Sophia greeted other children, smiled at strangers, and exuded a confidence that was both new and deeply familiar. It reminded him of Marina, with her ability to find joy even after hardship. You know, I've been thinking, he said casually. What do you think about us starting a foundation? Something to help children who have been through difficult experiences like yours. Sophia looked at her father with shining eyes. We can do that. For real. Of course we can. We have the resources, the knowledge of what works and what doesn't. And most importantly, we have you, who understands better than anyone what these children need. Sophia threw her arms around her father, nearly dropping her ice cream in the process. That would be amazing. We could ask other people to help too. Dr. Evans, Dr. Wallace, even Gabriella. And Lucas could be our junior consultant, Robert added, smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. In the following months, the seed of that conversation in the park grew into reality. The New Beginnings Foundation was officially registered, with a mission to offer psychological and legal support to child victims of abuse, especially those whose voices were often ignored because they were up against socially respected adults. Carmen Harrington's house was finally sold. To everyone's surprise, the buyers were Robert and Sophia Sinclair, not to live there, but to transform it into the Foundation's headquarters, where fear and cruelty once reigned. Hope and healing now flourished. On a special afternoon, 1 year after the events that had changed their lives forever, Sophia and Robert officially inaugurated the Foundation. Children ran through the once austere garden, now filled with colorful toys and flowering plants. Adults chatted excitedly about projects and initiatives. The house, once dark and oppressive, was bright and welcoming. Among the special guests were Lucas and his mother, Dr. Wallace, Gabriella Hayes, now responsible for a weekly column on children's rights, Martha, the housekeeper who had been the first to notice something was wrong, and Dr. Evans, the psychologist who had helped Sophia process her experiences. When it was time for speeches, everyone expected Robert, as the experienced businessman and primary funder, to take the stage. But to everyone's surprise, he passed the microphone to Sophia. The girl, now 10 and a half, stepped onto the small makeshift stage with confidence. She looked at the crowd gathered, families, professionals, authorities, children rescued from abusive situations, and smiled. "Welcome to the New Beginnings Foundation," she said, her voice clear and firm. "This place exists because we believe that every child deserves to be heard, that every child deserves to be protected, and that every child deserves the chance for a new beginning." She paused, looking at the house that had once been her personal nightmare. Where there was once darkness, there is now light. Where there was fear, there is now hope. This transformation is possible not just for places, but for people, for all of us. Her voice, once timid and insecure, now carried a quiet strength that touched everyone present. Through this foundation, we promise to be the voice for those who have not yet found their own. We promise to listen when others refuse to hear. We promise to believe when doubting would be easier. Sophia looked directly at her father, who watched her with tear-filled eyes of pride, because sometimes all we need is someone to believe in us. One person, one moment, one chance to tell our story. The small crowd erupted in applause. Sophia came down from the stage and ran into her father's arms, who lifted her in a tight hug, as he did when she was very little. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered in her ear. "I'm so proud." Sophia smiled against her father's shoulder. She knew the scars of her past would never completely disappear, that there would be difficult days ahead, that the journey of healing is never a straight line. But in that moment, surrounded by people who loved her, in a place transformed by the power of hope, Sophia Sinclair felt whole. The girl who had once trembled in fear alone in a dark room now shone with her own light, illuminating the path for others who were still searching for their voice. And that, she realized, was the true happy ending, not the absence of challenges, but the certainty that she would never have to face them alone again.